Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of Dark Shad-Bros. First of all, I want to take the time to thank everyone who has tuned in faithfully week after week to join me and my fellow cohorts here for the backstory of our favorite, or certainly one of our top favorite television shows ever made. So we do thank each and every one of you, and I want to take this time to remind you, whether it's now or if you're watching in the replay, to hit like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us immensely in terms of bumping up our viewership. I notice from week to week we get a couple of newbies that like and subscribe to the channel, and then feel free to ask questions underneath. If you're watching in the replay, we want the questions and comments during the show because we love to engage with all of you. But if you're watching this later on, please feel free to question and comment. We've been going back and forth, actually, ever since our last podcast last week. What the hell did we even cover last week? Oh, the WB pilot. The WB pilot, yes. Yes, I know. They start to meld after a while, even though we're not, Anyway, for those of you who don't know me, and there's no reason in this world why you absolutely should know who I am. My name is Peter Mack. I work primarily in the cabaret field, musical theater. I've done several off-Broadway shows, toured in several shows, written my own autobiographical play, which was produced off-Broadway in 2008, called Judy and Me. And on that note, that Judy is the one you're thinking of, the one and only Miss Judy Garland. That's who I perform as live, all live, no lip sync. I'm coming into my 23rd year this November, paying homage to the woman who is unhesitatingly billed as the world's greatest entertainer. So, and I also perform as myself, currently living and working in Salem, Massachusetts, where I'm doing the original Golden Girls Live on Stage, which I created back in 2003 with my other half, and the Judy Garland Show, a new Oz show, which is a tribute to all of the musical versions of The Wizard of Oz that have been done in the last 86 years. And I've also been blessed to get to know some of the Dark Shadow stars very well and become friends with them. Chief among them, the late, great Laura Parker. I wrote her last off-Broadway show, or an adaptation and remake of A Christmas Carol called Mrs. Scrooge. Marie Wallace, who is a very dear friend of ours. Donna Wandry, Nancy Barrett. Did about 8 weeks of cabaret with Nancy and guest starring for me. So some really fun times as far as that goes. And now I'm going to turn it over to my other cohort, Michael Panzerato.
Hello, everybody. As mentioned, I am Michael Panzerato. I am also an actor. Most recent projects, I don't know where you're going to bloody well see it, but it exists. Lost in Space, Escape from Earth. I do the voice of Dr. Zachary Smith, who would be my guy in the world. I also made a film with a very talented young man. You can find that on YouTube, Synonym Studio. You can look it up on YouTube, called The Dabbler, a supernatural thriller. I would like to take a moment, if I could, to say happy anniversary to these two lovelies that I'm sharing the screen with. Many, 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 many more. Cue the applause. And without any further ado, on to the third tech man, the guy who brings it all together, Dr. DJ Schaefer.
Oh, thank you. So yes, the cat is out of the bag, as it were. And by the way, you'll see cats come into the frame. We have 3 adorable fur babies. You'll see them come in individually or en masse this evening. I am sure of it. This already happened twice in the pre-show. Yes, literally 22 years ago, probably about 5 minutes ago, Peter and I were sitting down for our first date in New York City at a now shuttered restaurant called Gus's Place. I hadn't been on a date in about 15 years at that point, and I was not the most social person in the world at that very moment. I made up for it much later when we went to piano bar. That being said, and we kissed in the rain. That being said, I'm excited that we're here. And just so you guys know, from time to time, I'm going to look away. I may look down at my keyboard or at my phone, and that's because we encourage you guys to be involved in our show, and we want you to ask questions. And that's the only way that I can see if there's any questions. We can add them. If you ask through YouTube or Facebook, we can actually put your question or comment directly in the video itself. Or if not, you can private message me a question, or you can text me. Any number of different ways you can get in touch with me. So, without further ado, back to my husband.
Well, you had an old timers moment there because actually it was 22 years ago. We actually met at a Wizard of Oz
Oh my
brunch.
God! Yes, that wasn't
We
our first date.
we met 22 years ago at a Wizard of Oz brunch that a mutual friend was hosting, and that was how we met. So yes, Judy Garland has played so many roles in my life, including matchmaker. But that was how we met. And we did not go out on a date until almost 3.5 weeks later, I believe, was when I finally got the "Would you like to go to dinner?"
It was April 9th.
Yeah, and it was at that date that John confided in me that he had never seen Dark Shadows, but that his mom was one of the kids that ran home from school to watch it. I actually had to introduce John to Dark Shadows, which is interesting because he kind of went in kicking and screaming.
I've been outed.
Well, I was writing for one of the comedic one acts that I used to write for the Dark Shadows festivals, and I was taking a look at the Elizabeth Collins Stoddard Jason McGuire storyline. Which, by the way, happy birthday, Mr. Patrick, Dennis Patrick. It would have been his birthday 2 days ago. A day ago. Yesterday was his heavenly birthday. And we will be spending an episode in the future talking about him because he was so integral and so delicious. But at any rate, I was watching these episodes and we got to the end of the videotape and John was asking me questions peripherally. Like, so who's that? So what's going on there? Well, what about what about Barnabas? What about... We get to the end and he goes, "That's it? I'm like, no, there's another tape. Do you want me to put it on?"
That is true.
And that was how he became, that's it. Once you're hooked, you're hooked. That's how he got hooked on the on the show itself. So I do need to remind people because it has come in, it came up last week. It's kind of a sour subject and I hate to go down that road. We are not involved in the Lyndhurst event July 19th and 20th. We were supposed to be a part of it. We were looking forward to it. Lyndhurst approached us. We did not approach them. And we were very excited that we were going to do walking tours. We were told they were selling very well, even sold out. And then all of a sudden, we were unceremoniously let go from our post, which was very disappointing and a little sus, as my friend Sky has pointed out. It was never made quite clear as to why we are no longer doing it, although we now have our suspicions. We did receive an email last week from an anonymous fan under the name of Betty Hanscombe. You all know Betty was kind of a red herring in the show in its first year as a link to Victoria Winter's past.
I did not know that.
And it would seem as though, again, this is allegedly that due to a long-standing feud with a Dark Shadows fan is again, allegedly, as to why we are no longer hosting those walking tours. And I think it's really sad and unfortunate because the people at Lyndhurst always came off as being very educated and what would be another word there? I don't know.
And open-minded, respectful.
That you would hopefully get two sides to a story, to a situation that we tried to rectify many years ago. And seemingly there's only one version of this story floating out there. So if you want to know what it is, we actually had to delete someone from our... Well, no, I take it back. They deleted John, and then they kept me as a friend thinking that I would actually stay friends with them. So that is the world...
People are crazy.
That is the world of Dark Shadows fandom. So I bring it up only because a lovely lady who follows us week after week caught the show the day after and said, "Just so you know, I know that you were told that the tours were over, but I got an email saying that the tours were up again and that they were going to be hosted by a local Dark Shadows historian." Now, I don't know who that is. I grew up in New York, and insofar as I know, there are no local Dark Shadows historians in the Tarrytown area. And I could go further on that, but I won't for the moment. So if you hear anything, guys, please let us know. We've actually had to go to people who worked with us in the last 22 years that we've known each other. We have about a half a dozen people now who have said, we will give affidavits saying that you guys are on the up and up. We have worked with you. We trust you. We love you. And so we have plenty of ammo on our side to back us up in terms of being on the up and up. And I hate to start off on a note like that. Doesn't, even though Michael was going to be joining us for the tours, as he is a dark Shad-Bro. This just has to do with me and John, but I'm putting it out there because, as a great man once said, I want you to get it from the horse's mouth and not the horse's ass. So, yeah, hear anything, please come to us and let us know what you've heard. We would appreciate that.
That being said, we've had about 30 people wish us happy anniversary, so thank you for that. We have a new watcher who was someone who ran home from school to watch the show, Thomas Trett Tierney, who brought lovely...
Thomas, yes. Who brought Jerry Torrey to our Grey Garden show, yes.
So Thomas, welcome to our broadcast. Welcome to our Dark Shadows Love and Affectionate broadcast. Today we're celebrating the life and the acting chops of one Louis Edmonds as Roger Collins. I'm sure we'll mention a few of the other Rogers, as we've covered many of them in our recent podcast where we've looked at some of the ancillary projects that have been offshoots like the WB pilot and the Hods and Nods, all of those kinds of things. So,
also, just in the preamble here before we get to our topic, it's a couple of things. The WB, when we went back, a very lovely girl, I want to say her name is Ashley, and she had mentioned about that pilot not having too much heart and not too much depth. And I was quick to point out and say it was 40 minutes. There was no time. They were not given, in all fairness to Mr. Curtis, they were not given enough time for heart and depth. Whereas the old series had 5 days a week, an ongoing soap opera to develop its core. And even the NBC series had 2 hours and 2 hours to develop characters. And they were very fully developed by the time they got to episode 13.
Yep.
The WB pilot, there's glimmers of it, but it's you really can't, make that judgment call. But and again, that's lovely. I think Ashley. I hope I'm remembering your name right there.
I think you're correct. I will tell you right now.
Yeah. So, but just if you haven't seen the WB pilot, strongly check. I suggest that you check it out. We also keep talking about what if there was a Dark Shadows reboot. Little House on the Prairie just got greenlit for a reboot through Netflix, and the stars of that original show have tried to calm their fans down, saying we understand it's in really good hands and it's not going to be a carbon copy of our show, nor should it. That would be redundant and boring if they did that, and it wouldn't make any sense. Bewitched is apparently getting closer and closer to
That's amazing.
Yeah. Now, there was a pilot done apparently for Bewitched a few years ago, which is sitting in a vault. And I didn't read the articles, but I know people are up in arms about it. For myself, I only hope they keep it set in the 60s. I don't know how Bewitched would work in a modern day world. I'd be pleasantly surprised if it worked in a modern day world. With the film, which tanked, Shirley MacLaine was quick to point out we didn't give the fans what they wanted. Everybody knows Bewitched. This is her talking. Everybody knows Bewitched. They all know Darren. They know Endora. They all know Samantha. They know Uncle Arthur. And we did not give them what they know and loved. So I think that's going to apply to Bewitched as well. The actress reminds me a little bit of Elizabeth Montgomery with dark hair. So I wonder if they're going to go in the reverse there. Can't think of her name offhand. But she... I think Shirley was right. You've got to go for the fans. So I think it would the same, I've said this many times, would apply to Dark Shadows. You'd have to set it in the 60s, and you'd have to keep core elements of that original story while creating something new at the same time. We could have, the basic stuff there, which is what they were doing with the NBC series.
But before we go much further, it wasn't Ashley, it was Amy Ferguson.
Amy, I'm sorry. If you're watching this, Amy, I apologize.
And we had some lovely comments from Jessica Stevenson as well.
Yes, Jessica always comments. Yes.
And thank you, Mama Michael, for the anniversary wishes. That means a lot to us.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you.
Ma.
So yeah, I wonder how everybody feels about this Bewitched reboot, because it looks like it's going to get closer to fruition. Which again, I think, Michael, we've talked about this. No reason why Dark Shadows couldn't come back if it was done in the right hands.
We're going to give Gary and Bob heart attacks, but okay. Yes, in the right hands,
In loving hands.
in the right period,
in the right hands.
And by the way, thank you, Gary. The three of us appreciate you thinking that we're handsome. So thank you very much.
Oh, that's
means
very
a lot to
sweet.
us. Even though we all have the same haircuts and same lighting.
Well, I'm the only one with a mohawk.
But it's high and tight on the sides.
High and tight. Mine's less by choice.
So, well, hey, if you look on that side, forget it. Gonna start saving up for the plugs. Notice a few follicles missing there. But yes, tonight our topic of conversation was actually thought up of by Mr. Panzerato, Roger Collins. So,
I love Roger. I really do. I love Louis Edmonds too. I love him. I think Roger's probably the most unused character in the series, and he could have been so cool. So I'm excited.
Well, I mean, let's not forget, it's him and Joan. It's Louis and Joan that get the whole thing started off. I mean,
and aren't they tied for the most episodes?
He did 202, according to Dark Shadows Wiki. I don't know how many Joan did. I think Joan got more vacations than Louis did.
More than 202. It's 2,000 episodes.
I believe, according to the wiki here, and one of the other wikis, that it was 202 episodes.
As Roger.
As Roger Collins, maybe versus all of his episodes.
Please hold.
Yeah, now we have a debate going here. How many episodes was Louis Edmonds in total in?
It says she did 390, Joan, as Naomi. Believe it or not, Naomi was a close second to Elizabeth. 50 as Elizabeth, 36 as Naomi.
Oh, interesting.
Was 16. It doesn't mention, and Judith was 50. Naomi was 36. Flora was 16.
How many was Louis in?
Let's see here.
I know he was in 38 episodes as Joshua.
It's funny. You always think of it as more. You always, for some reason, I guess because...
It's that damn Leviathan storyline. Nobody's in it.
Let's see here, Louis Edmonds. It doesn't give a breakdown for him.
Here we go. So as Roger, he's in 196 episodes. As Joshua, he's in 38. As Edward Collins, he's in 49. As Roger Collins in parallel time, he's in 20. As Joshua Collins in parallel time, he's in 1. As Daniel, he's in 14. As Amadeus, he is in 2. As Brutus, he is in 5.
Brutus!
So what does that work out to be? 7, 21, 22, 42, 71, 267 episodes.
Well, there you go.
So not as many as Joe.
It's interesting. He had more screen time as Joshua than she did as Naomi, but he had that whole "I've got to help my son get fixed" arc.
Right, she's having the nervous breakdown.
Yeah, he was trying to get Barnabas fixed and juggling the whole family at one time, Millicent and everybody's. And I think that's when Joshua becomes the most interesting, when he becomes more human.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I enjoy those episodes a lot.
He's delicious as Roger. And for those of you who don't know, he was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And he went to Carnegie Mellon, which is now Carnegie Tech, I believe. He has said in interviews that and if anyone who went to the festivals knows that Louis was a pip. Louis was an openly gay man. He had absolutely no qualms about people knowing.
He was definitely out of the closet.
Yeah.
But I'm trying not to laugh because Gary Swafford is one of 4 people who have written. Remember all those business trips?
Yes.
To where?
To Bangor. to Bangor in the morning. I'm going to Bangor in the morning.
I went to Bangor in the morning. I brought you back a gift kitten. That's what he said when he showed up at Bangor. I brought you a gift kitten. His words entering Bangor.
When he first meets Barnabas, and he's just gotten back, and it's a recipe for Indian pudding, which might be an improvement over Mrs. Johnson's boiled dinners.
I love that episode, by the way.
It's a great episode.
Their relationship is amazing.
changed by that point, because going just back to the beginning and that great opening scene, which is so well written. And again, there's that vibe, Elizabeth, with all our ghosts, we don't need a stranger coming in here. There's such a wonderful chemistry between him and Joan. And he said they hit it off immediately. She invited him up to her house in Scarsdale and just to run lines, and got out the little cocktail tray, and they started, having aperitifs and running lines with each other. And they really did become like brother and sister. So
They were great in every timeline together too. Every single, it wasn't just as Roger and Elizabeth, although they were absolutely believable as brother and sister. They were great in every timeline.
Joshua and Naomi is my favorite.
Bickering between her and he in the 1897, I used to love that. What a distinct change, because now she's wearing the pants.
Yep.
And he's kind of, stop it or I'll tell.
And the handlebar mustache. He had that great handlebar mustache.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter's pointed out something.
I've said this many times, and usually people do not. They either ignore the comment, or they I think they just don't agree with me.
Well, no, the comment that you made right before the broadcast.
I know the one. That's what I'm talking about.
But you're 100% right.
Put the two faces
if
side
you
by
put
side.
Laurence Olivier next to, around the time that he divorced Vivian Leigh, right next to Louis Edmonds as Roger, it's the same face.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the eyes, the lashes. There's something about the shape of the face. They look like they could be related, particularly when you see him as Roger, not so much as Joshua, or when he's character makeup. No,
well, of course,
but as Roger.
Oh no, right? No, I agree. Wow. I'm looking at it.
Isn't it crazy?
Wow. Yeah. Sort of in the era when he did that movie with Marilyn Monroe.
Bingo. The Prince and the Showgirl.
Showgirl.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they have a very similar demeanor.
Very much so. Very much so. But I love those early episodes because Elizabeth is so torn. She's trying to protect David. There's not. I want to mention this, guys. We bring it up almost every other episode. You're right, Nick. He definitely started out as a sinister character. But Shadows on the Wall is Art Wallace's Bible for the original show. If you read it, 91 pages. Gives you a story arc that essentially never went anywhere because they did delve into the supernatural, and that was not part of what this was going to be. Everybody gets a backstory in this except for Roger. I mean, like, they all get their own chapter. Roger does not. He's included largely in Elizabeth's backstory. And first of all, I had forgotten that their parents were Joseph and Carolyn.
Oh, interesting.
In this Bible, it's Joseph and Carolyn were their parents. And there was some interesting stuff here. Roger was a change of life baby. Carolyn had him when she was 38. And as a result, Carolyn died, which sent Joseph Collins to pieces. He seemed immobilized by the death of his wife, and Elizabeth found more and more of the decisions of the business falling to her.
Interesting.
3 years later, Joseph died. Elizabeth's time was now fully occupied with managing the fishing fleet and helping to raise a brother 20 years younger than herself, because she's supposed to be 56 years old, according to the character breakdown. There was no time for a life of her own, and the years passed. A young man came to town. Paul started, was a 29-year-old, wild, irresponsible, charming, and amoral. A merchant seaman, slightly wounded in the war, Paul applied for and received a berth on one of Elizabeth's ships, but his sights were set higher than that. And I believe it says here that Paul and Roger actually became very close with each other. Elizabeth's brother Roger grew to manhood in the house, Always close to Paul Stoddard, Roger resented the attitude of the town towards Elizabeth's husband and always felt that his sister had driven her husband away. Like Paul, Roger matured with very little sense of responsibility. Unlike Paul, Roger didn't have enough charm to pull it off. Roger marries a girl named Laura Robin and moves away from Collinsport.
Interesting.
Yeah, they moved
Robin.
to Augusta. They moved to Augusta. They moved to Augusta, which is where they are, and then she eventually goes off to the funny farm. And they come back to live with Elizabeth. So that's just some of what you'll read in Shadows on the Wall. But again, he doesn't get his own chapter of backstory, which is interesting considering how much scandal he's involved in. But you send a man to prison, seemingly for 10 years, and he spends 5 knowing full well that you committed the crime.
Gary Swafford's asking a question that Sir Terry Thomas just asked. At one of the mid-90s conventions, Louis said that he'd known Joni Bennett long before DS. Anyone know how? Did they work together previously? And from what I understand is that they knew of each other in the New York circles. That's what I'm gleaning from that comment. But we should talk about this book right here.
So this is his autobiography, Big Lou, that was written by Craig Hamrick, who was a dear friend of ours. And he was very close with Louis. He was with him right up until the end. Louis developed throat cancer. And that took a huge toll on Louis because he loved to sing. And if you've never heard Louis sing, he had a beautiful baritone voice. And he did several Broadway shows. He released an album that was recorded live at the height of the Dark Shadows conventions. It's called Big Lou. And as well, I'm sorry, I think that's Nobody Cares About Langley, which is his character on All My Children. He wrote a song where he said to the writers, "You're not doing anything for me." And he wrote, "Nobody Cares About Langley." And then he sat down and wrote a song, which they incorporated into All My Children in a dream sequence. And he had a straw hat and a cane, and he would perform it at the Dark Shadows festivals. And his cabaret shows were always a lot of fun. They were much needed on a Sunday because occasionally Sundays could get a little mundane, and I'll leave that there.
Whatever could you mean?
Not all of us are into Shakespeare, so we needed Louis, to
Madam Finley, why won't you answer me?
to lift us up, and he did that brilliantly. They were very smart to let Louis end the festival with his cabaret show.
In future years, I would have Nancy Barrett end the cabaret show and the festival.
Yeah, Nancy did. And Nancy was very close with Louis. She had wonderful stories she shared with us when she was doing our cabaret show with us. So she and Louis and Alexandra were all very, very close.
A lot of people don't know this, but Peter mentioned it briefly. We were very, very close with Craig Hamrick. And in fact, the last 24 hours that he was alive, we were in hospice with him the night before he passed away. And that morning, we showed up at the Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS flea market, which was Louis Edmonds' birthday.
September 24th.
And we had gotten the phone call from hospice that Craig had passed away.
It was rather remarkable that he died on Louis' birthday because they were so close.
Yeah.
And Craig was just a few weeks shy of his 40th birthday. He was 39 and I believe one of the youngest people. I remember them telling it to be, was it colorectal cancer or colon cancer?
It was the combination of the way his cancer spread, but it was the first.
Yeah. He was in a small group of people that he fought so hard. If you've never read Big Lou, he did a beautiful job with Big Lou. And I think you can still get that on Amazon. And then, of course, he also did Barnabas and Company, which is a wonderful encyclopedia to Dark Shadows.
A little higher?
A little higher.
You can see Craig's name right there. Yeah.
There we go. And he was working on a revised version, which was then finished posthumously by R.J. Jameson, who wrote Grayson Hall's
That's right.
biography. But I treasure this because I got this from Craig. There are 2 copies. There was a black and white copy and a color copy. And this was August of that year that he passed away in Brooklyn at the Dark Shadows Festival, and I went to pay him, and he pushed the money away from me. He said, "Peter, we're friends. This is a gift."
Yeah.
And
It's signed.
he inscribed it, and it says, "For Peter, it's been fun all these years at the fests, etc. ... Especially the etc." And we didn't know that a month and a half later he was going to be gone. Although we started to see signs of it at the festival, Craig was very slow. But again, they were very close.
We have
very close.
Two fans, partners, Robbie Cochran and Mark Morgan. They're listening to the show. They're from Gay Friends of Dark Shadows, which is
wonderful.
The group online. Thank you for being here. Mark commented that characters that Louis played in the past seemed more masculine than Roger. That proves his acting had range. Indeed.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to put this over to Michael, but I'm going to throw my
Michael.
2 cents in, which is, I think whether it was the writers who discussed this, and several of the writers on the show were homosexuals, and Louis was openly gay, I wonder if Louis didn't make that choice, because to me, Roger never read as being heterosexual. To me, it wasn't believable with Laura, and it wasn't believable with Cassandra. We all know that was a spell. That was not based in any real truth, that relationship. And I just didn't see, it had nothing to do with Louis being gay in real life. I think had the show continued, or the question was never posed, but I think even Louis would have said that, or maybe that he dipped his toes in both sides of the pond.
He went off to bang them in the morning.
Bang him.
Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead. You go ahead.
I'm off to bang him. I wonder if and I'm going to probably get in trouble for even relating the two together, but I feel almost as though early Roger was how they aimed Roger in the Macbeth version of Dark Shadows.
Oh, interesting.
The Burton version. That I feel like Roger, early on when he was sort of a sinister, kind of darker, less caring character.
Sure.
Was more in the film written in, sort of in that direction, where he and Barnabas could not get on. Barnabas couldn't have all of his misbehavior with the boy. So that was one thing. But I've said this 1,000 times. I loved all of the characters. I think that what he brought as what Mr. Edmonds brought as Joshua was intense. I think a lot of people could relate to a father like Joshua, who it was, the point in this life is financial success, and I've built that for you, and I'm not going to just hand it to you until you prove. I mean, there's an episode where he actually yells at Barnabas for being home and not at work. I think he's about to marry Josetta, or something happens, or she's not in yet. That's it. She hasn't arrived yet,
yep. And
her ship is delayed, and he comes in and he gets kind of his arse up in the air because Barnabas is not at the office for the day. So I love, and the sternness, and we were just talking about this, how he becomes a great deal more human in a little chapter in the episodes where he's trying to free Barnabas of the curse and all of that. You see, well, actually, when Barnabas gets sick, you start to see that when Barnabas is ill, and he comes in and he says, "Father, is that you?" And she says, "Talk to him, Roger. Talk to him, Joshua." And he says, "He can't hear me." She says, "Yes, he can. Talk to him." And he talks to him about the war, coming back from the war. It takes a real turn. It takes a hell of an actor to pull off a turn like that. And then Edward is not likable at all.
No.
Well, you kind of feel sorry. What the hell is he doing in this? It's strange. And then the Roger of Parallel Time, who is as much a douche as Angelique in Parallel Time. It's and the camp really comes out in him in Roger in Parallel Time. What you're in spades in Parallel Time. The neckerchief down to here, and sure. I've just come from a party, and all of that. And my own, talking about casting, I've said this 1,000 times. Roger is very much reminds me very much of the character that Clifton Webb played in The Razor's Edge, and I mean, very, very similar actors, very similar characters is what I'm saying. All I'm saying. But yeah.
I just want to jump in here. Aaliyah put up a comment. People can also listen to Lou sing on the cast album for Earnest in Love,
That's right.
which is the musical version from 1960 of The Importance of Being Earnest. Louis plays Algernon. What's important, the reason I wanted to put this up there is it's in Alan Shane's book, um, that Alan Shane was the original um, pilot casting episode of Dark Shadows. And because he had worked with Louis, Alan Shane was also in the cast of Earnest in Love. And because they had worked together 8 years previous, he had remembered working with Louis, and that Louis had a particular demeanor about him and thought he was perfect for Roger. And so Louis never actually read for the character of Roger, so he walked in and had the part. So just quick to have that.
Oh,
as a piece of
Alan Shane,
information.
who also Dan went to about Frid.
And Alan Shane might be very well be watching this. He's watched a couple of our episodes here. He's here on our Facebook.
Yeah, their book, Norman Sunshine and Alan Shane, who are a couple. They wrote a wonderful memoir. They worked with Martina Hunt, Michael. They not on Brides of Dracula, but they have very funny stories about the Baroness Meinster,
Mad Woman of Shio.
and Curtis would defer to Alan Shane, and did so with Frid. He said, "What do you know about this guy?" And he said, "Oh, he's a very well-respected Canadian Shakespearean actor." And it was on that Curtis said, "All right, let's. Frid's got the part." So I didn't realize that about Louis. That's wonderful to know. I did not realize that about Louis with Alan Shane. So that's cool to know. He did. Someone mentioned about him having a wonderful chemistry with Alexandra. They were sparring a lot of the time. And he was extraordinary. I mean, the way he turns on her on Widow's Hill when she mentions Burke Devlin, that setup scene between the two, and he looks wonderful. He's got this beautiful white knitted sweater, not like a regatta, maybe a little bit like a regatta sweater. And the wind is blowing, and he's being terribly charming. And then all of us, as soon as she says Burke Devlin, woo! It's like waving a hamburger in front of a shark. He totally turns on her, and you see that this guy is scared. Pardon my French, shitless. He is really scared of Mr. Devlin, and he really treats Vicky horribly in those first couple of weeks. I love the scene where he wants to confront her, and Elizabeth tells him off. It's the middle of the night. And it's one of my favorite episodes. It's when she meets Carolyn for the first time. And Elizabeth is saying, look at them all on the walls there, Roger. Jeremiah, Theodore, Isaac. And she's throwing them all in his face, saying, you don't have the courage of any of our forebears. It's a really great scene between the two of them.
A lot of people are saying, so Renee said this, Aaliyah is backing her up, that Roger and Vicky had very believable chemistry on screen.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's because he liked Alexandra so much and Alex liked him so much. They really apparently clicked right away, and it shows. But he offers her, is it brandy? I think he offers her, what else would he offer her? It's got to be brandy.
Right.
And she goes, "No, it burns." And he goes, "The impudence of youth. You'll find as you get older, my dear, that pain often precedes pleasure." How they got away with that. How they got away with that line. At 3:30 in 1966.
Wow.
It's a great line. Showing
I offer you a sphincter of brandy. I mean, sphincter.
Our ancestors.
Obviously, Vicky, you haven't popped your cherry. Yes, it's.
Shake it.
We have. This is one of the most commented episodes we've had. Let's see.
Please bring in the comments. But I agree wholeheartedly with you, Michael. You got it all right on the head there.
Gary's pointing out some of the most supremely moving scenes from DS are when Louis, as Barnabas's father, realizes his son is a vampire. The tragedy between father and son is palpable. Certainly, we agree. And then Mark comments here. He said, Joshua Collins was rough and rigid.
Oh, very much so. Joshua, he has, and you I've always wondered, I won't go into that now, but what made him that way? Because I have a feeling that Joshua was not that way when he and Naomi first met. I think almost like a Scrooge-like thing where we see that Scrooge was, even though he was into his work, he knew how to have a good time and he loved his girlfriend Belle. And then something took over where he really became, as you say, rigid. And I think something happened to Joshua.
Which is why I love the 91 series so much, because when she goes, when the bat goes up in the belfry in her head and she just goes off the beam, and he says to her, "Should I wear the gold dress?" And he grabs her hands and says, "Oh yes, yes, honey. Let's go to the house. You wear the gold dress." It's just so tender and sweet. I believe that it was that way too in the original series. The backstory there is what we don't know, but I would love to suppose that to be true.
The audio dramas in the Blood and Ice or Fire and Blood or whatever that is, the yeah, big anniversaries when they suggested that his father Isaac, Joshua's father Isaac, was as imposing, if not more imposing, on his children than Joshua was, and that so far as to say that the pirated treasure that they had was a lover or the former love of Abigail, and that he wouldn't allow that to be, and he was killed in a storm. And then, so Joshua's father, who was played beautifully by Ryan Mitchell. He brought a lot of that he truncated a lot of that type of thing onto his son. But I don't know if maybe they talked to somebody who had a hand in the series originally and said, yeah, you should do it this way, or how that came about. But yeah, those are some of my favorites with Barnabas and him becoming more tender and loving, and and
And
you see the
again,
conflict in him, the
Yeah.
character. You see the conflict of not being able to. I'm not normally this way. I don't know what to do. I'm used to driving people like horses, not tenderly. So it's great to watch.
Carrie Perwicka, who never misses an episode, we love you, Carrie.
yes.
She asked, "Hello, guys. Do you think of Roger as a character you love to hate, and then when David's mom died and he became a character you love?"
It's funny that you say that because Roger is really hateful. I mean, we did a whole episode about David, and if you haven't seen it, go back and watch that one. That was one of our early episodes. David gets a bad rap, and I mean, it's in the Bible. David grows up with these two dysfunctional, deranged parents that fight all the time. They're both alcoholics. Apparently, Roger is a violent alcoholic. He's physically abusive. Furniture is broken. Although there was no alcohol in my family, I know what it's like to see furniture broken and see your mom get abused. That Laura was more loving, but still absentee because she's drinking all the time.
Sure.
And so you've got to put that into perspective with David, plus the fact that they were hinting broadly that David is in fact Burke Devlin's son. And Roger believes this, and that's also why he is so mean to David. He is not nice to this little boy. Everyone goes off on how awful David is, and I just think the kid gets a bad rap. I mean, hey, my father beat up my mom mercifully, and one night I took his cup of tea and I filled it with Visine, hoping that he would. I mean it. I mean, the statute of limitations is over now. And when I told my mom this, she laughed and she's like, "Well, I'm sure his vision was really good the next week." But that's the truth. When you watch, so I can say this unequivocally, and we said it to a social worker we once worked with. I prayed that my father would drop dead because he made our lives miserable.
Sure.
So I don't blame David for doing what he did to the brakes of the car. I truly don't. If that makes me a bad person, so be it.
It does not. It makes you a child who is hurting. And, David always is played off as a Malachite child who acts in a cavalier fashion as a devilish little child. And that isn't the truth. There's a reason why he's hurting so much. So I don't want to go down the David trail because we've done this before, but
No,
I sympathize with David too.
But then all of a sudden, once Vicky starts to put the pieces together and about Laura, and we start to see Roger soften up, and he is so tender with David, where he says, "Yeah, I don't think I want you to go away with your mother.
Yeah,
We're only just starting to get to know each other, and I think we need more time." That's one of my favorite scenes when he sees the Josette manifests the article about the young boy who died, and his name was David, and that's when he really starts to change. Carolyn as well, because Carolyn is not very nice to David either.
No.
Mm-hmm. Who is herself a child.
Yeah, she's 17 according to the Bible here. She's 17. She's still a kid
with an interesting thing hanging over her. Interesting parentage and a hermit mother and all that. So that it's what they say in what did Malcolm McDowell say about Michael Myers and Halloween? A perfect storm of
right.
circumstances to make what these people, what these people are. So, you get it. I like the softer Roger too, like how he was caring. And I'm always fascinated by the change in the relationship between the whole family and Burke in later episodes when Barnabas is around, and I mean the whole thing is different now. Like
sure,
Elizabeth, it's really interesting the dynamics that change the relationships in that series.
And he and Mitch have some really great moments together. I mean, again, talk about chemistry.
Oh, yeah.
There's really plus you've got Elizabeth who maybe deep down, it's when the truth finally comes out, when Sam finally spills the beans. And the truth comes out, and again, there's no recourse for it. Roger gets away scot-free.
Yeah.
Which was
Dark
very
shadows, baby.
Big of Burke. It was very big. I mean, he could have he could very well have proceeded with charges and such, but yeah, Louis bounced well with everybody. Mrs. Johnson, there's so much snarkiness between him and Mrs. Johnson.
He had that. He has. It's interesting because he comes off as one of my type of actor. Like he comes off like a Jonathan Harris or a Clifton Webb or one of these haughtier kind but not so much in the character as you would think he would become like a Thurston Howell. He doesn't go that far. He plays every character and Roger to the limit. He takes it to the peak, but he never goes over the edge until maybe Parallel Time Roger, but it still works out perfectly.
I love that you say that because it's the difference between doing you're a tribute artist. What you do to Jonathan Harris is tribute art. What I do with Judy and any of the people, whether it's male or female, it's tribute art. It's not caricature. You're walking a very fine line, but you're trying to keep that person real. And none of those core actors, Louis, Jonathan in particular, because of what he did with Barnabas, they never cross the line. Some of the other, I won't name names, even Jonathan said this, and it was usually the guys. It's a couple of the guys, including one who I know is very beloved, but who I think always went, as you say, over the edge.
Right.
And Louis never did that. He walked a fine line.
I wish he'd done. There was a brief period in the finally in the Leviathan storyline where Roger was really going to get involved. He was like, he was in the Trinity. He was in with the Triune. He was with Angelique, and he was working with Barnabas and Quentin. And you thought, this is it. Roger's really going to come to life and blossom. And I think he took a hit to the head, and that was about the end of it. He was right before all hell broke loose, I think, with the zombies. And I remember watching it for the first time being very excited because I thought, yes, sir, it's time. Roger's going to get involved with all the fighting, and he's going to be, instead of just holding brandy or nah. It was so tragic because I was ready for it. Edward, like when he played after Barnabas, he did great. He was a great, he was a staunch. He was sort of almost like, because there was a Trask, of course, in that storyline, but he was more interesting than Trask.
Oh my God!
He was a monster hunter that was more interesting to see than. I mean, it was really cool. He got the silver bullet, and Barnabas hid behind the cop and all of that kind of thing, and he killed one of the vampires, I believe, and with a stone instead of a hammer. So I'd love to see him get involved. It was so exciting to me.
Yeah, because then he did that according to, and I could not remember when was the last time we see Roger, because we get to parallel time, 1970 parallel time, and he's not in 1995. We don't, he's
Right.
and then when they come back into the time band, he's off in Europe. So
Hmm.
that's the last time we see Roger, and then I think the next would be Daniel Collins was his next character. So we never see Roger again after that.
No, I love Daniel. Daniel was so tragic. So
Yes,
tragic.
yes, and I love the way he played
Oh,
him. He had that. There was something so sweet, even though he murdered his wife.
So sad.
right.
But he had this wonderful kind of jolliness about him. It was like you thought, oh, this is he's cool. It was what they did with Flora.
Well, he reminded me a little bit of the because the little jolly, impish side of Daniel reminded me of his sister Millicent. That kind of upbeat, kind of woo, kind of thing reminded me very. Which I thought, if that was on purpose, that was very clever. You know, it gave continuity a bit to the relationship between the characters, and it was and the relationship between he and Ben was very heartwarming. Mr.
Yes.
Daniel, go calm down, Mr. Daniel. I'll take you upstairs, Mr. Daniel. It was very sweet, kind of an arc in that horrible storyline.
Well,
By I mean horrible, but I mean, sad and creepy and tragic and all that.
the confrontation with Valerie. Valerie, did you say your name was Valerie? First time I
Oh,
saw that was at a festival, and I remember, when she says, "What is my name, Daniel Collins?" And and like the audience starts roaring. I mean, it gets big bursts of applause. Yeah, they showed that at a Q&A with Laura and Roger, and then Lamar cited it. She said, again, I love that when I would come back and they would realize, oh, here comes trouble. She's like, those were my favorite moments, and that was one of those moments.
Collinsport
I can
40
definitely see why.
Collinsport 4099 writes, "So glad you're having this tribute to my favorite DS actor, Virtual Hug."
Thank you.
Virtual Hug back to
Oh,
you. And Collinsport 4099 sounds like the phone number of the mansion.
Oh, isn't that the phone number? Is that the phone? Is that the phone number, dear?
That is indeed the phone number
That's
for
the
the
phone
mansion.
number. Yeah, you have to always go into. You have do a freeze frame, and then which is what we do. It's
What we do, it's what you do.
no. Well, if I
yeah.
told, yeah, I mean it's like going on my phone here and let's see how many pictures. I have my own dark shadows.
Wait, which pictures are we showing?
Oh, dark shadows. No, not that folder. Not that folder. But it's like when you're working on a project
Happy anniversary.
and you're trying to figure out exactly how you make that. And we're almost there, by the way. We are almost there.
I thought we weren't supposed to talk about it.
We're almost there. But yeah, no, it's the same. And I think the phone went around. Everybody had the same phone number.
Collinsport 4099.
I think Maggie Evans. I think that was her. It was her phone number as well. I'm pretty sure it was.
I always thought that they should have Barnabas jump when the phone rings because he wouldn't really know about that. What the hell? What the hell was that? You know, just as once in a while. Ooh, I forgot about that.
It's like Maggie. It's like Maggie Smith when they install one in Downton, and she goes, "Oh, what
Oh,
is this? A torture device?"
and she holds her hand up.
Something along that, exactly. Exactly
Absolutely.
so. Um, the I was going to out Cassandra and Roger. Uh, the two of them together was interesting as well. That whole he was spouting off. I loved the way he was just going into poetry, moments of
Becoming Joshua.
of Muse, and then when he did she slap him or did he slap her? I can never get that right. Did she slap him?
Liz slaps him.
Liz slapped him. Okay, that's right. I can never get that right if he slapped him or she slapped her. But yeah, I love that. She's looking into the camera. Roger, stop it.
It's funny because that's one of the rare times they did a pickup shot because they have her in that beautiful orange and champagne gown as Naomi. And it's funny because I don't know if they got the hands right. When look at you, your hand is shaking with rage, and all of a sudden it's like she comes in from this way, but I think then the other hand comes in real time from that end, and it's like, Liz, you hit me.
I love that scene.
I'm
I bet
sorry,
it
but
totally.
you were behaving incredibly, Roger.
They send her up to her room. Go to your room or something off the wall like that. He starts screaming at her.
Go to your room.
That's on me. That's on me. I love that. The whole Roger and Cassandra, and how she used name escapes me at the moment.
Hey,
So Louis, so Roger steals his headpiece. Did we lose Peter?
we just lost Peter. Give me 1 second.
I'm here. I don't know if you
Red
can hear me.
alert.
Oh, there we go.
Are you back?
There we go. I'm back.
So I cannot move. It's that
Is either
wire.
Mr. Edmonds or Miss Parker fooling
It
around with
was,
the cable?
yeah. It's when he tries to put the whammy on Dr. Lang.
And Professor Stokes gives him the silver dollar to protect him. I mean the amulet. I mean the chocolate coin. I mean,
Exactly. Exactly.
uh, uh, uh.
Yeah, and that was another great arc there. He just goes, disappears. Nobody knows where he's at, and in she
Comes back with a
sweeps.
beautiful bride.
Yeah,
Mm-mm-mm.
that's a great arc. And then again, he kind of sort of peters off. Then once we get into Adam, it's again not my favorite storyline.
Well, that's when Barnabas and he save David, or think they save David from
Right,
Adam.
right.
And he says they go hunting into the woods. And again, I love those areas when Roger gets involved because he's such an interesting. He's portrayed by such an interesting actor that whether you like the character or not, he becomes interesting because of the way that Mr. Evans plays him. I like to see Barnabas and Roger doing things together, and
Who
I thought that
mentioned
was
the
really. Do you
elephant?
see
Who mentioned the elephant gun? Is that with Adam? Is that when he has the elephant gun?
Please hold. Here we go.
elephant gun?
Mark Morgan says, I liked when Roger came down the stairs with his big elephant gun.
Is
We are
that
still
like?
talking about a gun, are we?
I was gonna ask you, Michael. Is that when they go after Adam? Is that when he's going after Adam with the gun?
I think so. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that he and Barnabas go out because he snatched David. Um, he didn't, fortunately didn't throw him off the cliff like Karloff did the young lady, but it was similar. Similar.
And again, when we get to 1897 and pre 1897, where David and Amy are being possessed, and as always, like the Collins family has very short memories. They have very selective memories. You have a phoenix show up, and Josette's popping around, and books are flying open, and yet all this other stuff starts happening, and it's like, oh, it couldn't be. Could it? Well, you're
Right.
talking. You're being absurd.
Nonsense.
Nonsense.
Mag is
Hmm.
Josette, and then Vicky's Josette. Wait a second. Who's Josette?
Right.
He threatened to use
The
the gun
best.
several times.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Michael.
Again, we asked the question. Are we still talking about a gun? Go for it.
The best about what you're talking about there, Peter, is when the werewolf has shown up and Barnabas has already collided with it. It's scratched Carolyn's makeup off, and Barnabas is talking to the woman who's just cured him of vampirism, and he says something about it could be a werewolf, and he goes, "Don't be surprised, Julia. There is a precedent for this." And I'm thinking, says the guy who just got cured by the woman who cured him from vampirism. I ain't buying the werewolf.
I have to say,
Come on.
Aaliyah just wrote, well, they don't call him Little Lou.
That's, you know what? I meant to say this early on. I'm going to say that it's great that you said that, Aaliyah. He had a house which absolutely flabbergasted David Selby because he had an apartment in Manhattan, but he had a house out on Long Island in Suffolk County, and it was called the Rookery. A lot of people were privy, even fans. I was not one of them because I was still too young. Um, almost made it, but he would invite people over, and he was not fond of clothing. He did not like wearing clothes and liked to garden in the nude. So if you spent a day with him or even a weekend, you were very apt to find him out in the garden, naked, hoeing.
Marie
Killing the
Wallace.
birds.
Marie Wallace said she was okay with it. Obviously, she's a very free-wheeling person, giving person. But when she would pull up, and he would be there on his haunches, actually digging in the dirt, and she's got the picture from behind with the little Louis. So, anyway, by the way, Marie is watching, so we love you, Marie.
Oh, we love you, Marie. Thank you for being so supportive over the years. We love you. We miss you.
Jane House, who's a new watcher. Congenial Chatty Roger is my favorite. Side splitting, in fact.
Well, again, he's great with that scene when he meets Barnabas for the first time. I think probably, Michael, for you and I bet that's going to be when we do our favorite episodes, which Nick Caputo is supposed to join us. I hope, Nick, you're still going to join us for that.
Nick is going to join us. He asked.
On the top 5 episodes. That's definitely one of my... I think I may have to do 6 episodes because I love that episode.
Oh, I love the banter between everybody, but most especially the banter between the two of them.
Leah, we cannot tell that story on this podcast, though it's a terrific story.
I'll tell the story.
Oh, here we go.
They went to a club.
Here
they
we
were
go.
both gay men. It's no secret that Jonathan Frid was gay, even though he kept it more under wraps than Louis did. But Louis, they would go out. And they were out one night at a discotheque, and Louis took it all off on the dance floor, apparently, which upset Jonathan. Jonathan thought he went a little too far in terms of that. I think he didn't talk to him for a couple of days after that. But Louis thought, hey, this is my calling card. Why not?
Sam Irwin just wrote his autobiography called "Being a Monster Kid" is in the title.
Oh yeah, I think that. Yeah.
And he talks about, and it's been actually animated. There's a cartoon version of this story in the book, as well as the story. He went to a bookstore that had preview booths where you could go and watch a movie.
They had the big movie screen.
Indeed.
I heard tell anyway.
And he turns around and he is looking at the floor, and as he looks up, he sees these boots and these bare legs and these tight leather shorts, and it goes up, and there's a black leather vest and a white t-shirt, and it's Jonathan Frid. And he's like, yes. So there you go. Yep. Apparently we're telling those stories, Aaliyah.
Well, yeah. Sam put it in his book. Shorts. He has not spoken about that on other shows, but it's in a book, so we're not telling tales out of school. And apparently there was another private gentleman's club that Jonathan used to go to, and they had a little kitty cat, and the kitty cat, her name was, drumroll, Julia. So before he would go in, she'd be sitting on the counter next to the register, and he would go, "Hello, Julia."
Nick is confirming he's looking forward to it. So we're going to do that episode very, very soon.
Yeah. But again, there's wonderful moments between him and Catherine. They had a wonderful. He and David Ford, because don't forget, he and David Ford had, unlike the first Sam Evans, who was not. God love Mark Allen, but he was not a stellar actor. David Ford, there was so much pathos and gravitas to Sam Evans as soon as he came in.
Yep.
The relationship between Sam and Maggie as father and daughter, the relationship between him and Roger, and Sam being tortured, with all of this. It's up between his wife passing away and the secret that he held for Roger. No wonder the man became such a raging alcoholic.
Robbie's bringing up something really interesting here. Robbie, I hadn't thought of this until you just mentioned it. Elizabeth and Roger have a relationship similar to Alexandria and Alan Spaulding, played by Chris Bernot from Guiding Light. I used to love Guiding Light, and I hadn't thought of it until you said it. I wonder, did any of the writers ever leave Dark Shadows and go to work at Guiding Light?
I only know that Sam and Gordon Sam Hall and Gordon Russell went to work on One Life to Live.
One Life to Live.
And were in fact working there when the Dark Shadows cast. I mean, that's how Grayson got the job, obviously. Well, I'm sure Sam must have recommended Nancy and Mitch Ryan, not Mitch Ryan, Anthony George. So
I know exactly what you're talking about, because she was a very the actress that played Alexandra was like him, Chris Burnell, very elegant, a very urbane,
Exactly.
erudite lady, very much like Elizabeth and Roger. So good spot. I agree. She used to play Iris, I think, in another soap opera. My mother said, "Mammy, Iris."
Geraldine, did you play Iris on another show?
Iris on what other show? Long Life to Live or something. My mother always used to say that. She used to play Iris on something else.
Yes, Mark,
Mummy.
that's great. A fan had given me that clip years ago, and now it's up there. The whole thing is up there to watch, where Joan Bennett plays herself on Guiding Light, and they're going through, and the character of Nola, I don't know the show that well, was obviously a little kooky.
Yes,
she's rambling off all of the names of, oh God, let's see, I saw Little Women 10 times, and Father of the Bride, and I didn't like the ending on that one. It was a little odd. And she goes, and she's saying that, I saw you on television, and her friend says she's a movie star, not a television star. And Nola says, but you did TV, didn't you? And Joan says, you remember? And of course, Dark Shadows. You played Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, and Louis Edmonds played your brother. You seem like a walking encyclopedia, Nola.
She played Iris on Another World, which was my favorite soap opera.
Go ahead, Michael.
Boy, do I miss that show.
With Nola, with response to Nola, there was a segment where she married an archaeologist. And he had, I can't remember if it was his mother, who was very Martita Hunt-ish. His mother lived with him in this great mansion, and she worked for him before they got married. And there was a segment where she imagined that he might be a vampire because he was always disappearing during the day, and they had this whole segment. And I often wondered when I was a kid, are they getting that from Dark Shadows? Are they stealing some of that from, because he was the guy that played him. Quentin McCord was his name. Quentin McCord was the name of the character.
Douglas Marland, who was one of the head writers on Guiding Light, was a big fan of Dark Shadows.
Well, and don't forget Mary O'Leary, who worked with Jonathan Frid, worked on Guiding Light. So I don't know if she had any input there as well. I guess she was a producer, I believe, on the show.
The guy's name was Quentin. The guy that she thought was a vampire. You never know.
So it's not impossible that, again, you borrow. It's done all the time in the business. It's done all the time that they may have been borrowing things from Dark Shadows. So maybe they did.
Nobody more than Dark Shadows.
Who was the writer that said, it was a critic who said, Dan Curtis does not have a band of writers. He has a merry band of thieves.
Oh, got it.
But it was great. We love it.
Oh, yes.
They do it beautifully.
What's not to love?
Yeah. And again, Louis did get to show his range as a character actor because Joshua is nothing like Roger.
Oh, and Quentin's housekeeper was Mrs. Renfield.
Oh, well, there you go. If that isn't an in-joke.
There you go.
Edward is nothing like Joshua. He's the schemer. He's definitely, he's definitely got more sensibility than Roger does. Roger,
shrewd.
Yeah, Liz was picking up the tab.
Sure.
This man could not function. I think he barely got by at the cannery. She gave him a job because, the parents would have rolled over in their graves if she hadn't.
He was meant to be a confirmed bachelor with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, all of those characters, as we say with Roger in Parallel Time, bordering on Uncle Arthur.
Hey, Terry just asked this question. Do you think that the only way that Roger had sex with women was because he was under their spell? So the Phoenix needed a catalyst in order to have a son, so she was able to convince Roger to be the father of her baby. And then Cassandra puts him under her spell. So is that the only way that he would have sex with women, as if he was under the spell of some supernatural force?
Well, again, it's conjecture on my part and many fans' part that Roger was gay. And I think even Laura said, Miss Parker said, "Yeah, I think you're right. Roger did not come off as a, he wasn't a Burke Devlin. He wasn't.
He was a
wasn't,
flaming heterosexual.
he was a flaming heterosexual. Um, I've my theory is that Laura was Laura up until the woman died in Phoenix. That the woman who burns to death in Phoenix was a human being taken over by the spirit. The woman who comes to Collinwood to get David is not really Laura. And David says that. He goes, "That woman is not my mother." And they're like, "What are you saying?" And he's like, "No, that's not my mother." So I think but she may have been possessed. Maybe the possession was there because it was going to happen eventually. So it's not an impossibility. But definitely, what the woman who dies, I think, in Phoenix and burns to death was a human being, and then the woman who shows up to claim David is in fact the ghost.
I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah, we talked about that with Penny Dreadful. That was my theory that she's not human. It's not the Laura that Roger married.
Like a doppelganger.
Yeah.
Nick Caputo, to answer your question, yes, Louis did several television projects before Dark Shadows. He did a lot of the like players theater kinds of stuff. He's in Cyrano de Bergerac. He is in Victoria Regina, the TV version of that. So there are quite a number of TV projects he did before that. Now, as for his film, if he actually did movies, yes. I do not. The answer to that is yes. Before Dark Shadows, he did do movies.
Or is it during that he did? Let me see if it's here in Craig's book. He appeared in stage revivals of the classics like The Way of the World with Thayer David in 1953 and The Cherry Orchard in 1955. With Brett Summers, he did a Broadway play called Maybe Tuesday and Passage to India. He also appeared, his soap opera debut was in Young Dr. Malone as Rick Hampton. He landed a supporting role in a movie called Come Spy With Me with Troy Donahue.
And he did 77 episodes of Young Dr. Malone, so not anything to be sneezed at.
And I remember them showing clips of Come Spy With Me at one of my first festivals. And I didn't realize Troy Donahue, who was Tab Hunter's replacement, when they were threatening to out him.
So Come Spy With Me was 1967, so it was a precursor to Dark Shadows.
So he filmed it probably just before he started DS. Yeah.
Great questions.
Was he on Omnibus too, right? Didn't he do a thing on Omnibus?
I don't
know why I feel like I read that.
There's so many things. Let me see some more of the questions here. No, Laura was not interested in Burke anymore either. That's true. Yeah, she just wanted David. She had some really great moments with Burke. I mean, there was some palpable chemistry between Diana Malay and Mitch Ryan in terms of the kissing scenes. It was believable that they had once been lovers, that she was his old flame, as it were. I think Roger is probably my favorite, although I do love Joshua. Louis joked about it. He made Jonathan giggle like a little girl on stage. He said, "My favorite moment," it was my first festival, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Is Jonathan and I standing over a coffin and me saying, "No son of mine is a vampire," and Jonathan saying, "But Daddy, I am." Lot of subtext there.
Nick says, "I've seen many Dark Shadows players on TV shows after Dark Shadows, but don't recall seeing Edmonds." Of course, his big one was Langley on All My Children.
Because my family, they were ABC soap opera fans.
Exactly.
So we always watched All My Children and One Life to Live. And he was a carny hustler. that gets involved with Phoebe. What was her name? Wallingford.
Wallingford.
Phoebe Wallingford. Um, and then they fall in love and they do get married, and then that wonderful storyline where Carol Burnett, Varla, is his long lost daughter. And I just remember being a little boy watching it with my grandma and Louis Edmonds and Carol Burnett doing the tango inside the living room of their mansion. And Phoebe walks in and almost passes out. Carol Burnett's got a rose in between her teeth. And it was priceless. It was priceless.
So get this. Louis Edmonds did 2,338 episodes as Langley.
There you go.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Do you know
Amazing.
how I found that? I found out that he was on there because there was a soap opera magazine I'd seen in Giant,
Oh, the Super.
and it was about soaps in general, but it had Barnabas, that famous publicity shot of him with the cane in his hand like that in the ring, and the cane's hooked over with the moon in the background.
Yep.
So I wanted it, so my dad bought it for me, and then it went from a little segment about Dark Shadows into a number of other, but then Louis Edmonds appeared in the magazine as being on something else. So then I wanted to watch that, and my dad said, I'm sorry to break this to you. He may be in that stuff, but it's not going to be Roger Collins' son. You know that, right? Like, it's not going to be a spinoff of Dark Shadows or anything, because I was always looking for that kind of thing, or in Falcon Crest for David Selby to mention Quentin or do something about, say something about Collinwood, like a dope, But yeah, that's how I learned about him being on that other soap opera. I'm looking up to see if I can find any pictures of.
Yeah, he and Carol Burnett were a trip. They were an absolute trip together. Very funny. And then they started phasing him out, which apparently really broke his heart because they were focusing on the younger actors. Then he wound up with the throat cancer. And for someone who loved to sing as much as Louis did, that was heartbreaking. I think one of his last festivals, my first California convention was 1996. And Louis was there the first day. And then they had to fly him home. I think that happened twice at festivals where he just was not up to it. And I don't recall what his last festival was. I don't know if it was around there or in 1997. But it did break his heart that All My Children started to phase him out. There's a story in here, I can't remember her name, the woman who plays Myrtle on All My Children. She was one of my favorites. She had a delicious voice. I don't know where she was from. You would love her, Michael, because she had one of these unique voices. You think, where did she get that voice from? And she was on the show up until the end almost.
Eileen Hurley.
Eileen Hurley. She loved Louis, and she said they went to some god-awful soap opera, not the Emmys, but something like it. And she said it was droning and once again, Louis thought, I must entertain, and got up and did a full strip tease in front of the entire soap opera community. It's in the book. It's in the book. Because he was like, someone's got to do something to liven this event up. So he was the life of the party.
I listened to him give a great talk. Well, it wasn't a whole talk, but he was being interviewed about something, but he was talking about his manner of speech, which, as we all know, I adore. And he said that it was not an affected manner of speech. He said, and he wasn't trying to sound British, but if you go to portions of Louisiana, the way they speak English is an English accent, is his, so he's not affected at all. He's just, that's his manner of actual real speech is that's all. I'm sure theater helped, the diction and RP and all that, but it's actually, and I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah.
In that same interview, I watched it last night, actually, the one you're talking about. He talks about the speed of the diction and how that speed alone, if it goes a little bit faster, it becomes more Southern. If it becomes a little bit slower, it's more English. The cadence. He said, how could, I can't do a Louis Edmonds accent, but he said, how could I do Shaw, with that Southern accent? So I had to, focus on, but it's fascinating.
I love that talk.
Me too.
Love that kind of thing.
Well, what is that? What
I
they
mean,
said?
when you portrayed Jonathan Harris, and I always thought Jonathan Harris was English, let alone to find that he grew up 2 miles from where I grew up in the Bronx.
In the
So
Bronx, yeah.
crazy. Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
He's a kid just
Al
like me.
Lewis. Al Lewis says that about him in an interview with Lost. He says, everyone thinks that he's a Shakespearean from England, and really he's a Russian Jew.
Right, a Jew from the Bronx. Uh-huh. Yeah, he grew up listening to and he decided to started watching those B English movies and decided that that was the way he was going to speak, and that was the end of that. And I get it, because Baltimore is harsh.
Sure.
Ooh, there's a
And
there's an O in
those
Baltimore that's brutal,
and
brutal.
those families too, and they attribute this to Katharine Hepburn and a lot of people from that era. Was it that Mid Atlantic accent they call
Mid-Atlantic,
it?
The
yeah,
Bryn Mawr accent.
yeah,
So if you think of Joan and Madam Finlay, why don't you answer me? That
right.
kind of thing.
You don't move your jaw sometimes.
Or like Gloria Upson and Auntie Mame. I can't think of the actress now. We just lost her recently,
I can't tell you how Tom died to make up wings.
and she said when I grew up, she said I grew up in Boston. So when they gave me the character breakdown, she said I remember my mother saying to me, "I don't ever want to hear you talk like one of those society girls." And she said, "What do you mean, mother?" She said, "Like you have a hot baked potato stuck in your mouth."
I loved her.
Hey.
Joanna Barnes was her
Joanna
name.
Barnes. So she said that I can't tell you how charmed I am to make your acquaintance. This-
Yeah, I love that minute to listen to that. Have you ever seen Lucille Ball
yes,
do Katharine Hepburn?
yes,
She
yes.
she talks about being intimidated by her, just the way she talked. I mean, it's a split second, but she sounds just like her.
Yep. And they were friends. They were
Yeah.
friends. Yeah. So yeah,
Mm-mm-mm.
Louis was delicious. Louis was delicious, and I think the end of the show, as Brutus, it's kind of a he seems to be just maniacally laughing a lot. Wearing that damn
Yeah.
Harlequin collar.
The least interesting of his characters.
We get
Yeah.
this. We get this all the time. Peter, I love your Joan Bennett voice.
Thank you, Gary.
Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.
Thank you, Madam Finlay. What's wrong, Madam Finlay? Why don't you answer me?
I just watched that the other day. Now I'm only thinking of you instead of her when she does it. I only think of you when she in that scene. I just watched that the other day while I was
Oh,
loading clothes.
oh my God.
Sorry. I
Did
needed that.
when oh shit, what was it I was gonna say? Oh, Roger in okay, so Roger in Parallel Time, the fun, the
Woo.
really the really fun Roger. He reminds me, and I don't think that they were this way, but one of
Oh,
Elizabeth Taylor's angry exes, I think the one just before Burton, said something really cruel about how Roddy McDowall would sit at her feet and stare up at her longingly, and how he followed everything she did and lapped up everything that she did. And I think that's
was it
what I mean.
Warner?
I don't believe they behave that way, but I feel like that's how Roger
Oh,
in
it,
that
it, it was Hilton.
time band was with Angelique Hilton. It was terrible
Yeah.
what he said, and I don't believe that. But that's the Roger and Angelique relationship, I think, in Parallel Time, the way he was with her. It's rather strange.
Yes. Well, and then he shoves what is it? A hairpin? Is that how he gets her? That's how he bumps her off
Like the
during the seance. He shoves a hairpin in her neck.
We have a request for the
that's
Grayson voice.
Yeah, wait. What was
what?
the first? Cut. Why?
That's it. Why?
It's Roger. Roger Collins wants it that badly. Roger. Oh, no, I wish it were Roger. Oh, Miss. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just, I just don't. Oh, I just don't know what to do. I can't go to the police. I hope that worked for you, Renee.
Oh, how funny. Gary says, Jude Joan tormenting Reverend Trask on the phone.
Oh, I have to tell you, Gary, that's. I have to go back and watch those to do that for you. That's priceless. When she comes back from the loony bin, and she's on to him, man. She's she Joan was great. They
She was
really
ruthless.
I hate there are fans that make fun of Joan Bennett and it pisses me off
People are all saying that brava,
What?
perfect.
that she wasn't a good
That's
actress, that she wasn't an asset to the show. Oh yeah, yeah.
oh, go to hell. There's no way. No way. She was an absolute. She was the anchor character on the. She was the anchor star on the show. First of all, she was put on the show to lend weight to the damn thing. Um, she was with what I was starting to say with Judith is there's that Colin streak that we always talk about where they can be cruel and ruthless. The Collins family, they get like a streak, and they all even Sarah has demonstrated this sort of dangerous streak in them. And then Roger, obviously, in the beginning of the series, showed that same streak. A cruelty and a sinister side. So it's really really an interesting continuity in the family that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And again, they were so believable as brother and sister. It's why it's such a letdown in the end. We don't see Roger. We only see when Stokes and Barnabas and Julia come back, and there's Elizabeth looking for Roger's speech, and off she walks, and then Barnabas and Julia walk off, and that's the end of that.
And at the
Um,
end,
and then we're in parallel time. I would have loved to have seen more between Elizabeth and Roger. I would have loved to have seen what they would have done with his character. I think Louis may have been getting a little bit tired of the show. There was a rumor, and Craig does not allude to this in the book. And even when we asked him, there were fans who swore that Louis Edmonds did not want to do House of Dark Shadows, and that Dan Curtis said, if you want your contract renewed, you know, you're in the movie, and if you're not in the movie, you're not in the soap opera.
Crazy.
But I just can't imagine Louis Edmonds. And again, I think we would remember that with Craig. Uh, I think they all thought it was silly. They all had the same response to the final product. That
right?
it was very silly. But like Carlin, I think Carlin would have came and went had the show continued. And
Right.
I know Renee, I know how much you love Johnny Carlin. Again, I think he probably would have went off to L.A. for a while, and then Dan would have brought him back.
100%.
I think it would have been that kind of revolving door. And I bet Louis would have done the same thing because they didn't, as you say, didn't give Roger, just when you think he's going to be this great big hero, they clunk him on the head, and
Right.
that's the end of that.
That's the end of it. Yeah. Exactly. I have to say, can we take a minute to say that early Rogers' wardrobe was great? He even had an Inverness. Like when he would stop by to see Barnabas, to see how things are. Have you seen David and all? He'd be in a flashlight and a hat, and he had a great suit on or he always had the great, of all of the males in the series, Roger had the coolest, because Barnabas was in the same three suits every day, but Louis was always in
Right.
combos. He was always in the
Well, yeah, because
matches,
they gave
so
him. It's funny when Jonathan came on. They took his houndstooth coat and they gave him. And Ramsey Musteller must have made that for him. Because we only see it a couple of times, and then he goes back to the regular coat. And I have a
yeah,
feeling it was a question of no. That Barnabas has that's his
to be
trademark.
the only cape.
Yeah,
The
Right.
only Inverness.
I
you
agree.
can't start giving all the guys.
But I
You know
agree.
why? Because I think in the United States, the people in Europe, in the UK, of course, more than one person would in a family would have an Inverness, but I don't think they'd buy. Oh, wait a minute, two people in this family have a cape. Yeah,
Right.
It was
not in the United
mod.
States.
It was mod because my aunt said, in the city in Manhattan, you would see businessmen who had those coats.
I remember them.
You
Oh
know,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm old enough to remember them.
yeah. So
they're
it was
coming
definitely
back
in. Yeah.
here.
Oh, there's a men's clothing company on Facebook. They didn't do it this winter, but last winter they had a series of Barnabas coats that you could buy in various colors.
There was one that we saw
Oh,
that's pure wool. You called it an opera coat. So it's the double cape on top, but with full sleeves.
Oh yeah, yep.
Oh, and it swung. When you turned around, it had enough swing in it. Oh, amazing. $1,900, but still amazing.
Yeah,
So,
and yes, Renee, it's true. Yes, Joan flubbed lines, but they all flubbed lines. But she
oh
also
my
was very
God.
good at catching herself. I know what you're saying. The fact people go after her, but here she was in her 50s doing live television essentially every day. Where, as Laura pointed out, when you do a movie, they turn the camera on, you say a couple of lines, they turn the camera off,
sure.
and that's not what this was. So when you go back and look what they did do, especially Joan, it was an awful lot. It was even though she was used to doing theater, she had done theater where you're doing the same show night after night. This was a new script.
Oh yeah. And think of all the marvelous moments on the series that were hers. The moment with she and David, the moments with Naomi and Barnabas, the moments with Alexandra and Joan Bennett, or those moments with Roger and she had so many good moments that it couldn't have been because of the other actor. They had to be, she's the commonality. So
And Louis
I think she
had
was
the
wonderful.
most infamous blooper of them all,
Yep. It,
going into that mausoleum with Joel Crothers. Let's get out of here. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Several of my ancestors.
It's indeed, baby. Keep it in the
um,
fam.
Watch Louis when they screen that at a festival. It's online, and the lights come up, and he gets up out of his chair, and he starts going like this. It was great. It was great.
Gary Swafford says, off topic, but wasn't Joan the first movie star to do daytime television? Or was McDonald Carey first? But she was a bigger star than him. Uh, so McDonald Carey in One Life to Live is 1965, but by far the cachet and the stardom of Joan Bennett far exceeds that of McDonald Carey. I think people today still know who Joan Bennett is because of all of the movies she did,
With Dark Shadows.
and of course of Dark Shadows. But I think people would be hard pressed to remember who McDonald Carey was, other than for One Life to Live.
And
So,
Joan did get an Emmy nomination in 1968. I believe she was the only actor, and I think it was the only Emmy nomination the show ever got. She was nominated in 1968
isn't that
for
crazy? Wigs and
I mean, nowadays it would probably sweep Emmys.
Carlin would win hands down.
Carlin would have won. Barrett would have won.
Barrett's genius.
Barrett. We always say Barrett and Carlin were I think the two strong, and Thayer. I think uh,
There.
Thayer and Carlin and Barrett were the three strongest character actors on the show. They could become these other people so seamlessly. Even Thayer, and that voice was so distinct, but yet he Petoffy is not Ben Stokes. Sandor
Mm.
is not Professor Stokes. I mean, they're all incredibly different.
And the way they would all play them, sometimes even Mr. Edmonds, back to back, like in
Yes.
one episode. Like, wasn't he the ghost of Joshua Collins in one episode where he was? I mean, that's like seconds apart. He's in the graveyard in a shadowy,
Big
in
cape,
the cloak and the shadows. Yeah, big cape.
this huge collar. It's almost like a Satan collar. It's they because they had to get him in and out of it really quick so he could come back and be Roger.
Right.
He's protecting the family and get out of here, get out of here, or something along
It's
those lines.
it's parallel time because they want to know who Barnabas is. They're like, who is this Barnabas Collins guy?
Yep.
Yeah. And he
Him.
summons his father's ghost or somebody's ghost.
Yeah,
Yep.
And his father, but it's not his father, and he tells him, "I do not know you. You're not my Barnabas," or whatever it is. Piss
yeah.
off!
And
Piss off! These are my stories.
Mark Morgan, we agree. Thayer, David, and Nancy Barrett both deserved Emmys. But so did Carlin. And, Carlin would joke in later years. The fact that he won the Emmy for Cagney and Lacey, and all he had to do was stir a pot of sauce in order to take home that Emmy, when as Willie, and as all the other characters who played on the show, the intensity of Willie, the changes that happen in Willie over time. When Willie is feverish and in bed, just that whole acting moment where he doesn't say anything, just brilliant.
Carl, I mean, Carl, and you see here I got to play all these different emotions, and yet I got the Emmy for stirring the sauce and saying, "Hey, Mary Beth, how was your day?" Was that was his. Hey, he got the Emmy, and Tyne Daly loved him. You can watch her on the Rosie O'Donnell show, and she says they show a scene of the two of them together, and she goes, "He is one of the great mensches of all time."
Yes.
And we didn't fake anything in terms of loving each other on screen. That's just how tight the relationship
Something
was.
about him as Willie, and I know this is going to sound so strange, but there's something about him when he was young and played Willie that reminds me of Tom Cruise in his face.
Oh, sure.
Something about his looks.
I could see that.
That's so strange, probably, but I always think that. Oh, it reminds me a little bit of Tom Cruise.
And James Dean.
Very James Dean.
Yeah.
There's a very James Dean thing going on there. Yep.
We also loved Pansy Faye, and in fact, we shared a dressing room with Nancy Barrett. And if you gave her enough white wine, she would do the Pansy Faye voice for you. So
she did. Yeah, she would go into the Cockney. She told us Nancy had nothing but lovely stories and memories of the show and of Grayson, and what a good cook Grayson was, and that her favorite word was hoo-ha. For those of you who want to know, that was her,
Grayson's?
That was her favorite. Hoo-ha was her favorite word.
Oh. She loved the hoo-ha.
Yeah.
Ah.
What in the hoo-ha? What in the hooha is this?
You heard it here first.
Breaking.
Barnabas, please leave me alone.
Do the hoo-ha.
She always seems so manic.
Poor Julia. And the moments between Louis and, again, favorite episodes, when the Countess shows up.
Brilliant.
And sweeps in, and she is berating this man. And downing America, and downing, his Maine and everything and he's trying so hard, do you really affect a title? I was born with it. I'm still alive.
That was what I was going to say. The conversation about the title is great because he fought in the Revolution.
Yeah.
The character fought in the Revolution, so it's
we also
going to be
Virginia
impactful for him.
Totally. I assume you have servants, and he's like, yes, madam.
He's great. I like Joshua a lot too. I love Roger and Joshua. I like them a good deal. You don't, and I like when Joshua is softened up and it's all been said and done. And he talks about how he's going to raise Daniel.
Yeah.
How he has nobody, so he'll raise him as his own son and all of that kind of thing. I think that's, and there's a brief nod that we've talked about before when Barnabas finds out that Joshua made arrangements to free Ben and all of that, and you can see it because of the change in him in that particular part of the show. It's very, very nice. It's great to see, and he, like I said, he played it spot on. He didn't crumble as Joshua. He took a lot of pressure.
Yes, yeah. When they're just before Barnabas thinks he's going to stake him, say hi, Wheezy.
George.
That's our little girl. That's our big baby. She's 13.
She's 13 and a half.
13 and a half. She'll be 14 on June 10th.
Baby.
Where they're tying the whole thing up, and how he's saying how he's going to rewrite the history books. They'll never know about Angelique. They won't know anything about Angelique. You'll have gone to England and stayed there.
I also love when Naomi is dead and Barnabas hears that she's dead and he's going to go after Joel Crothers. Oh my God, Nathan. And Nathan runs to Joshua and Joshua says, I couldn't stop him if I wanted to. and he says, "I'm going to leave now because I don't want to see what's going to happen to you." Joshua just leaves on that, and on that note, I'm out of here.
Yeah, he blames you for his mother's death, and I can't say I blame him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's another bit of fun right there.
yeah. And
And
with
the you know what? Roger is also great fun at the séance in the costume when he go for the costume party and everybody else is freaked out about it, and Roger's like, "What's the problem? It's a party." And then they go and they do the séance and all of that, and I think Roger's a lot of fun in that segment in that episode.
that's what Mark is it Mark?
Mark Morgan.
Mark was just saying it's interesting how they would flip back and forth because he did not want to do the séance for Laura. Then all of a sudden he's gung ho at Barnabas's costume party, but then when they get to Sarah's ghost and the preamble to 1795, again he's poo pooing the whole thing. It's like he
Right.
can't make up his mind.
Do I love the
Well,
supernatural?
Barnabas's claret cup was very strong, is the only answer. That claret cup that he offered was really laced, really went a little hard on the claret cup.
All right, and then they go back home, and and now to bed to dream of lovely ladies jumping off of cliffs.
Oh Lord.
And there's Joan. She's like saying, "Ghosts and seances, it's all wrong."
Stop it!
Stop it, Roger.
Mm-mm-mm. What? Who was it that jumped up? I was watching this the other when they tried to have. It was Professor Stokes and I think two other people, but I can't for the life of me. Oh, Nancy Barrett and I think he was the werewolf at this point. He jumps all over her when she starts to get possessed and ends the seance. And Professor Stokes says, "I should very much like to know why you did that." I love that. Well, I mean, it could be wrong, but she looked like she was becoming possessed.
That's right. That's right. Oh yeah.
Shame on me.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he was great. He was delicious. That's the best word. I would use the same thing in terms of Grayson. They were,
Yeah.
and he told a funny story about Grayson where about 3 or 4 weeks into her being on the show, he said she invited me up to her house for cocktails, and she started probing me, and he said she wanted to know how much I made,
Oh, how
what my
funny.
salary was, and he said basically I was like, "Nice try, dear."
Uh, they were wonderfully camp.
Yeah,
They weren't
Renee
too, but they were wonderful.
yeah,
Renee says Louis was just awesome in all of his roles, but listen, y'all. Parallel Roger the Murderer was shocking, twisted, and wonderful.
and none of them are likable, Renee. It's like with the exception of Elizabeth, no one in
Parallel
that
time.
Collins family is so. I'd say wager to say almost the same thing about 1897 to a degree, but parallel time. These people are not likable at all. Thank God for Barnabas and Julia and Elizabeth of that time because there is just now you want to just mow them all down.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're talking the good Julia, not the other, not Hoffman.
Yeah, not Hoffman. No, no, because she really is Mrs. Danvers. I mean, she truly is Mrs. Danvers.
Oh yeah, not bad hair day Hoffman. She always she always looked like she had bedhead to me. Hoffman.
Julie would always go read a book when things went afoul.
Yeah, this is true.
Right.
And and then Mark between Liz doling out the Valium in the first year. No wonder Vicky could never understand anything. She was always giving her popping pills to her. We called it recently. I said Valley of the Dark Shadows.
Everybody was stoned. No wonder they were seeing ghosts
And
and
then there's
vampires.
the Julia with the sedatives, and then that moment with Chris Jennings, where he's like, "I need sleeping pills, like 2 bottles worth," and she goes, "That's an awful lot of sedatives."
Julia says that?
Yeah,
Julia? I
Julia,
love
it's like, do you really need to sleep that badly?
it. That's too funny. I gotta look that up now.
Yeah, yeah, because he's asking for an inordinate amount of sleeping pills. Yeah,
That's great fun. That whole when he's there and that whole time frame is so fun.
when
Great
they're
fun.
when they're trying to help Chris. I think that's a really sweet storyline.
Oh, that is funny.
They're really gaining momentum.
Adam is on the loose and Julia's flipping through Vanity Fair.
Mark, my favorite moment, bar none, that can crack me up is when Adam does come to life and Barnabas and Julia, and he stabs himself, he cuts himself. And they walk in and she looks at him and Adam, Adam, are you all right? And like she hasn't even waited for the reaction. She just starts doing hurdles over all of the equipment. And this poor Jonathan going back and forth. And when they get to the top of the door, you know, and they've got his hand is through the door, and the two of them are like battered up against it. Just just watching her do the hurdles over the equipment. I want to do a music video to that. I want to do a music video every time you see Grayson and just come back to cutting to her doing the hurdles over Dr. Lang's equipment.
Julia and those knobs.
Ah, indeed.
Indeed.
And clearly the generator that they had in the basement of the old house.
Can we have that discussion? Right. There's no electricity in the old house because he wants to keep it all as it were. And then all of a sudden, they've got enough, not just electricity, but enough electricity to reanimate a person. Yeah.
Two persons.
Two
Those people,
persons.
yes.
Well, and then in 1840 with Judah Zachary, it's like, wait a minute. How did they get all of that into that underground mausoleum?
So Marie is watching. Yes, Marie. Two people. We totally, yes. We love
people.
The fact.
No, Eve. We are not forgetting her because quite honestly, Marie, you made that storyline bearable.
Yes.
Thank God they brought you in. And God rest Robert Rodin, but you gave the story the juice.
Well, she could act. Let's have that conversation.
Yes.
Which was not one of Mr. Rodin's skills. No,
he was handsome and he was very sweet.
He was very kind. We met him at many festivals.
He was a very sweet man, but he was not a terribly great actor.
I had to add this because Marie's watching, and Mark said, "I loved Horny Eve."
Wait, well, Marie, you were after Nicholas. You wanted Marie wanted to jump Nicholas Blair's bones. She wanted to get it on with Nicholas.
But who didn't with Humbert? And Marie was in touch with Humbert for many, many years. He lived on a boat, right?
Yeah, because Marie, correct me if I'm wrong, I know Laura reached out to him trying to get him to festivals, and then you reached out to him and he said to you, I love the fans and give them my best, but I'm just not interested in attending, but please tell them that I love them. It was something to that degree. I love the fans and I appreciate them, but I just don't have any interest in attending, and which was forthright. He wasn't being mean.
Yeah.
Because Laura was trying to get him every year. She would either give him a call or email him and say, will you please come? Please come. And every year he would, say, because she said, you don't know how much fun you would have.
Hey,
which Marie can attest to is that the stars always had fun.
Gary, we do at least one thing a year with Marie. We absolutely will have her on the show. We did a birthday tribute to her last year. She couldn't join us. She was a little under the weather, but Marie absolutely will be live here on an episode with us. What'd you say, Eddie?
I don't know if you could bring up the picture I sent you earlier.
I can.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second.
No, actually, Gary, we did an event with Marie and Donna in 2018. It was called Shadows Over Halloween. They did readings, and we have the Q&A from that, which we're going to be putting up online. And it was also it was a benefit event. We did it about a week and a half before Halloween. It was a lot of fun. And in fact, that's how we started to get in touch with Lyndhurst, was we've been wanting to do another event with Marie. And, Marie had said at one point, as long as it fits in with my schedule, I'd love to do another event. And I think that's why they initially reached out to us, is because we wanted to do an event again with Marie, and we wanted to do it up at Lyndhurst. So
That's right.
we certainly would love to do something online with Marie, and even more so live if it fits into Marie's schedule and she wants to do it.
She just confirmed she's in.
Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to work with Marie again. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Talk amongst yourselves. It's going to take me 1 second to bring this up.
Oh gosh, I just had a senior moment.
Sorry.
It was about
Been
Louis.
there before.
It was about Louis.
To draw back to Louis, when we in the original when Barnabas and he first got together, when Barnabas made this initial appearance, and they have that conversation about I'm looking into a shipyard and all of that kind of thing, and he notices the ring,
Yes.
and at some point Barnabas they bring out the Amontillado, I think is what it is. He brings out the Amontillado, and Barnabas says that was Jeremiah's favorite drink, or some or the room, or something like that, and he says to him, "You're very intimate with our ancestors, aren't you? You're very." I thought that's really a cool.
Call it a hobby.
Because I'm pretty sure too, at one point when he shows him the ring, Jonathan Frid dropped a line or was dropping a line or something, and he says, "Oh, you inherited it then." Like something you see him kind of. Anybody who's been on stage and they know those, the signs when somebody drops a line and somebody saves you. He's. I really think he says because there's a little brief pause.
I think
in that moment.
Jonathan mentions at the start of that episode, he gets flummoxed when he's talking to Vicky and Carolyn. He goes, "It's so nice to see everyone here alive. In England, they're no longer."
Right.
And Jonathan was upset about that, and he said, "But when I went back and watched the episode, I thought it played Barnabas is trying to get his thoughts together."
So there we are. That is Donna Wandry on the left. That's me. That's Peter, and that's Marie Wallace on the right. This is
Shadows Over Halloween, which I believe was October 20th or 21st of 2018. And it was a wonderful benefit show. And the ladies did readings, and then a Q&A with me. And I got to read The Legend of Sleepy Hollow with them. I chose that. So the three of us read that together. And then we did the Q&A, and they had a wonderful, fans were coming up and buying their photos and Marie's book and talking. And people said, please make this a yearly thing. And then I lost my mom the following year, and then COVID hit. And so we were on the brink of doing another event. And that's why I said we had been in touch to do another Alzheimer's benefit. And so I'm hoping that Marie can do something with us in the future, because people have asked about it, and we'd love to do that.
Another Mark Smith says, I met Marie at several festivals in LA over the years. She's so talented and such a sweet person.
We agree.
100%. We used to live right down the block from her in New York City, so we got to see her a lot.
Guys, I don't know if you've ever been able to spot this. You got to go back to the first year. But Louis had a blooper that you have to watch out for. Pardon me. It is, apparently, he thought he was done for the day. But they were all instructed, don't get out of costume just in case we need you. And he thought he was done. He went up to his dressing room, and he had taken off his pants and his jacket, and he was in his boxers, and he didn't realize he was in the final scene. He already had one more scene to do. And Robert Costello shot up the staircase. Marie would tell you they had a wonderful spiral staircase that led to the dressing rooms. And he said, "You're on, you're on, you're on." And Louis said, "Hold the tape, hold the tape, hold the tape," all the way down the stairs. He said, "Hold the tape up." And they threw a smoking jacket on him, and they put brandy in his hands, and they shot him from the waist up.
How funny.
And according to Catherine, you could see his hand shaking from nerves. But I've never been able to find the moment. So if anyone can find that moment where we just see him standing at the mantle.
Oh, I now want to find
near an episode, because he's practically in his birthday suit from the waist down. but that's one of
And
his
this is an
more.
early episode, right?
Yeah, this isn't early, so it would be pre-Barnabas. Yeah, yep. So that's one of apart from ancestors. That's one of Louis' famous bloopers. But you can't. You have to be looking for the scene to know that it's the scene.
One of my favorite scenes of his is when he says, "Oh, we wouldn't think of charging you rent
Me and
for the
Robbie were in
old
an
house."
elevator with Marie at a festival in Brooklyn. Robbie and Mark were in an elevator with Marie at the Brooklyn Fest, and they were too starstruck to say hello. She would have loved both of you.
One thing about the stars, I will say this, is you can approach any of them.
Yes,
You can approach, always approachable.
almost everyone.
Almost, yeah, almost everyone.
Ask me at another time about Diana Malay, but that's another story for another time. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Diana had other issues as well. God rest her. Craig
God
had
rest
very
her.
funny stories about Diana.
He did indeed.
She was larger than life. I think Marie would agree on that. She was very much larger than life. But then again, so was Louis, but in a good way, and that's why we're here tonight. And I don't think we've even scratched the surface. We didn't have a chance to do as much research for this episode as I would have liked. We wanted to show clips. It's been a crazy week. John's been on a crazy job hunt, so we didn't get. But I was so glad because we were.
I had a little heart scare. I'm seeing the heart doctor in the morning.
Yeah,
so
we could use the prayers. John has been dealing with some heart issues since around Halloween time.
We were all surprised that I had one, but who knew?
No, that would be me. That would be me. Yes, Jonathan walking into view of the. I think the reason that happened, Gary, was because they didn't cordon off the Collinwood set. Usually they would, or he came in from the back. He came in from the cubbyhole, not realizing that the set had been cordoned off for the credits, and that's why he comes out with his street clothes in his hand. It's great. It's great. Thayer does it. Thayer walks into his house. So you see someone in Josette's room behind the window. Happened quite a couple of times. But yeah, I'm Michael was the one who suggested Roger. So thank you, Michael, for coming up with tonight's topic. And
Thank you.
Well deserved.
We'll circle back around to Roger.
This is one of our most interactive episodes we've had in a long time.
So well, guys, tell your friends because we're going to keep doing this week after week.
It was episode number 86 without the pants. We've had it confirmed by 7 people.
Okay, now I got to go back and watch episode 86 because we're into the supernatural by that point. Josette has appeared, so we're into the supernatural by that point. So now I got to see.
That's how.
It's episode 86 after Mitch and Nancy scene, right near the end.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to look it up now. Please like and subscribe, guys. That's very important. Tell your friends. We want to gain more viewership. And if you're in the Salem area, we have shows coming up here.
Do one on Magda.
We're going to circle back around to Grayson as a whole. We have to do a whole new Grayson episode.
Yes, our last one got hijacked from our initial intent, so we're going to revisit that
in a good way.
Yes, I'm not. Yeah. I wasn't being bitchy.
No, in a good way. So yeah, more episodes to come, including our favorite episodes and our favorite writers. Nick Caputo came up with that. So it's going to be look at your episodes, and you guys can do that too. Go in, look at some of your favorite episodes, and then look to see who wrote them and see if there's a trend in the writers. Because I'm noticing a trend with mine, and I want to see from my cohorts if it's a trend in the writers, even though the writers did change down the line. But that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you, Gary. Yes, like, subscribe, and share the videos to spread the word. Share them in groups, share them with friends, send them links, but please, that would really, really help us out a lot. And by the way, to the groups that do share our content, we want to thank them. We have several groups who not only share our content, but also allow us to live stream into their groups. So thank you for that. That means the world to us. And if we're missing any groups, please reach out to me privately. Um, my email is very easy. It's djinla70@gmail.com.
And this isn't directed at Michael. It's to Heckle and Jekyll over here. Marie can probably attest to the fact that we're not bad people. We might have issues, but we're not bad people.
We are not bad people.
Laura Parker didn't think so, and I don't think Marie believes that, or she wouldn't still be friends with us all these years.
Laura would not have allowed us to call her our West Coast mom if that were true.
So just throwing that out there. I'm not fishing. I'm not fishing.
Yeah, we're not fishing for compliments, people.
Just throwing that out there. So we appreciate you guys. We love you. And send in ideas for shows as well. Please send in ideas for shows as well. Comments and questions. The whole enchilada. Thank you guys so much, and stay in the shadows. See you soon.
Adio.
Nobody can see this, but people are writing. One second here.